Hi, I'm Katie, and this is episode 56 of Ornamentations, which is a really exciting one for me. I hope you're going to enjoy it just as much, because today we have the release of the Queen Anne's pin pillow, which is my new online class. And so all details about that are going to be discussed in this episode. And then there's also lots of samplery goodness for Sampler September, because I have a new sampler start to share with you, as well as progress on my existing sampler whip, AKGIT 1833 from Modern Folk Embroidery. And then later in the episode, my mom will be on to share her haul from the attic and her experiences as a first timer at the attic and at summer school. She'll also be sharing her whips with you and a new start. And then I also have the winners of the summer school giveaways from the last episode. And then at the very end, we will do a full kit unboxing for Queen Anne's pin pillow to take a look inside at all the fabulous treasures in this wonderful kit box. And that's where we'll start today, because Queen Anne's pin pillow is the really big news in my world. I have been working like a cricket to get all of the kits together and make sure that everything is ready for registration, which is now open on my website. The cost of the class, which includes your kit and all materials, is $400, payable either in full or in different interest-free installment plans. So let's talk about the class. As we previously discussed a few episodes ago, Queen Anne's pin pillow is an absolute masterclass in sparkle and shine. It is an absolutely dazzling mega piece. So we have that fabulous sparkling silver background, which video just can't do justice to. This thing lights up like a diamond under direct light. It is a dazzling effect, and I don't say that lightly. And then the pin pillow also makes wonderful use of silk shading. So this class relies heavily on long and short stitch, which is one of the techniques taught, which gives you all of that beautiful color shading and also allows the silk to shine. So long and short stitch is one of the focuses of the instructions, which are quite comprehensive. If you've ever done anything with me, you know I believe more is more on instructions, because if you don't need it, you can just skip past it. But if you do need it, then you've got it. So I really focus on shading and long and short stitch, because long and short stitch is one of the most useful stitches there is in surface embroidery. It is an essential part of your toolbox, but too often it can look blocky, static, and just not a fan of it always as it's used. So how to shade, how to angle your stitches, and how to get the most out of long and short stitch is a big focus of the instruction. There is an entire lesson dedicated to angling your stitches, blending colors together, getting the most out of long and short stitch. And then we will also cover the working of each motif in turn and in detail to ensure that you can master the silk shading, which is one of the things that I think visually really makes this piece, and that you absolutely can do if you are a novice to surface embroidery. There are no prerequisites for Queen Anne's pin pillow. All I ask of my students is that you be willing to learn. So the Elizabethan Valentine, which was last year's class, was designed as a companion piece to to Queen Anne's pin pillow. You'll find that the techniques kind of build on what was learned in the Elizabethan Valentine, but it's not a prerequisite. The course does not assume prior embroidery knowledge, so you can absolutely be a beginner and be a success if you're willing to learn. I always believe that the hardest thing really is conquering our own beliefs about what's hard and what's scary. So I've talked about this on here before, just more generally, but when I started Cabinet of Curiosities, which is Thistle Thread's online casket course, I was a new stitcher. I had no idea what I was doing. And that meant that I didn't know enough to be scared. I dove right in. And the thing is, if I had really had any comprehension of what I was taking on, I think I'd be in a really different place today. It was really fortunate for me that I didn't know any better, actually, because I didn't know enough to be scared. So I just jumped in, I did, and you know, I found that I could. Whether or not that sounds appetizing to you, if you take Queen Anne's Spin Pillow, you've got me, and I will walk you through every step of the setup, the design transfer, the stitching, the finishing, with very comprehensive instructions. Before we get to a little more on that, I would like to talk about the inspiration behind this piece, which we discussed a little bit when I first showed you this a few episodes ago, but I'd like to show you something. This is a really fascinating portrait. It is of Elizabeth Vernon, later the Countess of Southampton, and it depicts her at her dressing table getting dressed. It's a really unique and intimate look at Elizabethan noblewomen who were never painted like this. The story behind this painting is something I would just love to know. A lover, a husband, because women weren't, of her status at least, weren't depicted like this at the time. It would have been shocking if it were publicly seen. So you see Elizabeth Vernon, she's getting dressed, and then if you take a good look at the corner of her dressing table, there is her pin cushion with all of its pins, because like many women of her status, she would have been at least partly pinned into her clothes. So that ruff you see pinned up to her bed covers behind her, bed curtains behind her, would have then been pinned into place on her jacket once her jacket was fully laced up and she was ready for her ruff. So pins were an absolutely essential item for a woman like Elizabeth Vernon. You had to have them in quantity, and that meant a pin cushion on the dressing table was an essential for women of her status and rank. And that spawned a trend for decorative pin cushions, and then the full kind of design historic inspiration journey behind this piece is covered in the course introduction. You don't have to be interested in that. I offer it because I think it's really interesting, and that's included in the course, but you don't have to read it. You can just stitch the piece if you want. Like, there's no judgment here. This course is designed for you, and it's up to you what you want to do with it. So that means it's completely stitched at your own pace. And if, you know, Elizabeth Vernon in the historic context of the course and what I drew on for inspiration is not interesting, don't read it. Skip it. Go ahead to the actual instruction. Totally cool. And so that brings me to the format of the course. It's a 9-month online course with downloadable PDF lessons. One's posted on the 1st of every month. Class starts on January 1st, 2024. So class kits will be shipped out once you're paid in full. So if you pay in full up front, that means your class kit goes out immediately. Otherwise, your class kit will ship out once your payment plan finishes. And so the lessons are entirely read and work at your own pace. I place absolutely no requirements on my students. You know, work it when you want. If you want to save all the lessons up and stitch this all in one go, do that. Chip a little here, a little there when you have time. Like, you know, as I said, the course is for you to set you up to be a success with this project. And so how you want to do that and what you want to do with it is entirely up to you. I'm very into flexible learning. It's how I myself learned. The downloadable PDF format is how Thistlethreads teaches, so it is legitimately how I myself learned, and that's really why I believe in it. And then a couple important details about the class kit. Class kit includes full spools of everything that's used: your finishing threads, your stitching threads. So we've got 10 spools of Soie de Paris and a slightly expanded palette from the Elizabethan Valentine, very similar shades, but a few more of them, so you can do more with shading. And then a full 25 gram spool of silver plated 9 DRM tambour, same thread that was used with the Elizabethan Valentine. That was a 10 gram spool. This is the monster one. You don't need 25 grams to work the Queen Anne's pin pillow, but I believe that students should always have lots of extra, because whether or not you end up needing it, it just frees you from anxiety. If I make a mistake, will I still have enough? Like if I want to go back and redo something, will I still have enough on my classes? The answer to that is always yes. So you have the freedom to make mistakes, or you have the freedom to go back and revise your work if you're not happy with it. You've always got plenty of materials, and I think, at least for me, I think that takes some of the pressure off. And then you also have a full spool of the real star of this kit, in my opinion, whatever that's worth, Gilt Silk Twist the Truth. This is a new and exclusive color of Gilt Silk Twist that was created for this class. It's exclusive to Katie Strachan Artisan Embroidery. It is the green that I have wanted to see in the line for a very long time, and now it's here. Gilt Silk Twist can get kind of a bad rap because, rather unusually for embroidery, there really is a right and a wrong way to work with this thread. It has a direction, essentially, and if you work against the thread, it's going to make you miserable. So how to handle Gilt Silk Twist is also part of the instructions. How to handle all the threads is part of the instructions. Like I said, I don't presume prior knowledge. You can do this as a beginner and be a success. So I think by the end of this class, you will make friends with Gilt Silk Twist, and you will love it just as much as I love it, and that is so much because it is my absolute favorite thread of all time. It does some really amazing things. It has sparkle, it has color, and it has structure, which allows it to be worked in some stitches that you can do if it was just plain silk. So the Gilt Silk Twist on this project is used for the scrolling stems, and that's a simplified braid stitch. We didn't go full on heavy braid here. That's a little more advanced. This is, I think, a very workable one. Although I will also provide alternatives in the instructions if you try that out and you decide it's not for you. Again, the project is adaptable, so if you want to change colors, if you want to change the technique, I have seen a lot of variations on the Elizabethan Valentine from my students so far. Some have put beads in place of the French knots. They have changed colors to work with another projects that they were doing. Additional detailing has been added to some of the flower motifs. It is all fabulous. I love to see that. Make the project your own. That's amazing. And so, yeah, basically, I think that you can do this if you want to do it. That's my prerequisite, is that you have to want to learn. And if you do, then I would love to teach you, and that's pretty much, yeah, what I have to say about the class. So if you do have any questions about the format, what is or isn't included, email me, use the contact form on my website. It's always the easiest way to reach me. This does cover every detail from the setup of the fabric to the design transfer. So unlike the Elizabethan Valentine, which had the design pre-printed on the ground and then you filled it in, you can't do that for Queen Anne's pin pillow because it's really important that the design be on the grain of the linen, and so the transfer materials are included in your kit, and then how to do that, how to set it up so it is on the grain, all of the details, that's all covered in the instructions as well. So this is a beautiful project, but it's also a great skills building one if you're interested in surface embroidery. If you stitch the pin pillows start to finish, you'll have a lot of tools in your toolbox to go on and do other things with, if that's of interest to you. It doesn't have to be. I mean, you know, stitching should be fun, whatever that means to you and whatever you aspire to do with it, whether or not that's Queen Anne's pin pillow or not. The one thing that the kit does not include is your working setup, and hold please, and that is your frame. So like the Elizabethan Valentine, Queen Anne's pin pillow needs to be worked under full tension. That means laced in a frame and not worked in a hoop. If you've never worked with a frame before, that's not a problem. Choosing a frame, what your options are, and then preparing your fabric for lacing and setting it up in a frame are all fully covered in the instructions. So what your choices are, where you can buy them, that's all covered. I just want to let you know going in that you will need a frame setup. And the reason those aren't included in my kits is because for most stitchers that's a one-time expense. So most stitchers will never need more than 1 or 2 frames, and the gold standard for that are slate frames. That's what I myself used for Queen Anne's pin pillow, but it's not necessary. You can use reinforced stretcher bars just fine. And also important to note when you're choosing a frame is that it doesn't have to be sized to the project either. So this is the back of next year's class. It's definitely a work in progress. It's been in timeout for quite a while, and I need to get back to its stat if it is actually going to be next year's class. And when I started this, all of my smaller slate frames were in use. I do have quite a wide variety of myself for all the different projects that I work. So I chose a larger one and I laced into it, which has not been problematic at all. So if you're thinking about what to buy, a larger frame can actually be very versatile. So a full discussion on frames and how to use them, as I said, is included in the instructions. You don't need to know any of this going in, but I just wanted to let you know you do, or you will need a frame to work this piece, which I think brings me to really the end of this segment. We'll get on to Sampler September. I hope you'll think about joining me on this fabulous journey. I really do think that this is an absolutely wonderful piece. It's just sparkly and beautiful. It combines so many elements that I love, and I absolutely loved making this. I love having it finished even more as a beautiful piece to display it, like it with the Elizabethan Valentine. It lives in my Brita Mark casket, and I hope that you will love Queen Anne's pin pillow as much as I do, and that you will enjoy the stitching journey and the class. So if you have any questions about the class, about the project, whatever, please definitely ask them. The best way to reach me is through email. Use the contact form on my website. And with that, let's get on to Sampler September. Actually, one more thing before we get to Sampler September. So if you are mourning the end of summer, although it honestly does still feel very summery here in Northern California right at the moment, the conversion that I did for Brenda Gervais' My Home Sweet Home is still available from the attic if you'd like some late summer stitching. This is a photo of Carolyn at Stash Sisters on Instagram. Finish of my conversion, which is on display at the attic. It is just beautiful. She used Himalayan Fog, and I think the colors absolutely sing on it. But I know Cloister Cream has also been a really popular pick for that kind of more prim look. So give the attic a call if you're interested in My Home Sweet Home. And with that, we actually will get to Sampler September. So this is my new start, which is Oh Sweet Humility, Eliza Townsend's work by Cross Stitch Antiques, which I purchased when I was at the attic in April. I have to tell you, I didn't get quite as far on this as I would have liked. I was really busy putting together all the pin pillow kits, but this is what I have. You know, this is actually a fair amount of hours, but it looks so pitiful when you hold that up. So this is an original silk conversion. It is an incomplete silk conversion, and it will remain incomplete for quite some time. I'm gonna stitch on this until the end of September, and then I really do have to put it away. I have so much model stitching that I have to get to just to meet demand on the Flosstube kits. I'm gonna have to start stitching further in advance, and that means I've been sitting down and trying to work out the 2024 kit schedule and really get started on that stitching. But I am having a holiday for Sampler September, and so as far as the conversion, I will post what I have, which is extremely limited. It's only about half of what you need. And as I'll tell you in a minute, I am taking a slightly different color tack than what's called for. What a surprise, right? I never do that. And so I'll share what I have, but I won't be able to share the complete conversion until I have that. And honestly, that may not be until next September. So I'm going to show you my threads, and then we'll talk about some of my choices on here. The linen here is Legacy Linen 45 count Jersey Cream, and my thread is Soie Surfine, which would not be most stitchers' choice for 45 count, but it is mine. I do definitely have a preference for lighter coverage because I think your thread just sits so neatly in the weave. It gets this really delicate, detailed look, so you don't get such the kind of coverage you would with a thicker thread. But the way your stitches look is just so pristine and perfect. I get a lot of questions about like, how do I get my stitching to look like that, my cross stitching? And the thing is, I don't do anything special in terms of cross stitching. There's no like magic way to wield a needle or anything. It's actually about how you pair your materials with your linen. So I've talked at length about that before. If you'd like the full details on my thoughts on coverage, that's all in the specialty thread tutorial, part 1. So, oh sweet humility. God, that looks absolutely pathetic when I hold it up in front of the camera, and yet I really did put in a fair amount of hours. So, oh sweet humility. This is such an interesting survival from a dye and color perspective. So you have these rich, unfaded pinks, reds, and yellow greens, and then in the border, you see all this gray. I would bet my bottom dollar that that was not originally gray. I am certain that we are looking at a fugitive color. So I was talking to a friend with this who knows a little more about this period. You can predict how color would have looked like in different periods of time because we know what dyes were used. Susan Stanley actually talked a little bit about this in her latest Stitch Stories episode, number 3, which I'll link in the description. I'm more of an expert on the 17th century, so I know a lot about what colors were used then. So I called in a friend who knew a little bit more about this century, and we picked this apart to guess at what these things would have looked like originally. And I'm not actually trying to recreate what this looked like originally, but it's an interesting discussion. So she had a really good point here. Her thoughts on what that gray was originally were pretty close to my own, but she did point out something I hadn't thought of. The yellow greens are stable. Those are probably pretty close to the colors they were originally. That border was actually probably green originally as well, but all that fugitive color tells you that it was a different type of green. She thought maybe a more blue green, something like this. This is Soie de Paris 1834. So a very blue toned green as opposed to my preferred yellow toned green. I think there also was probably a blue in here as well, and that's one of your grays are. I do not believe for a second that those beautiful flowers in the border that she chose gray for that. It just seems so incongruous with the rich, vibrant colors elsewhere. I'm gonna guess that that was originally blue. However, what called to me about Eliza Townsend's work is that red, pink, green color trinity, And so that's what I've chosen to emphasize in my own conversion. I would like to just note that when I futz with colors, or I talk about what did this look like originally and that wasn't actually gray, that's just my own color interests, and it's not to say that the designer has done anything wrong here. Kathleen has charted from the front, which is a totally valid and very popular way to chart. I'm just taking a different tack on it because when I do my own conversions, I try and think about what appealed to me about this piece, what in that photo made me want to stitch it, and what do I want to emphasize. So I'm just trying to talk you through what was my idea behind picking these threads. It's just another take on this project, which is not to say that the original take was wrong or that my take is better. It's just different. So I, as you can see, went for very yellow greens just because those are my preference. I did choose ones with a little bit of a gray content to them, just to kind of nod to the gray that you find on the original. So I've restored the green in the border. The central stripe vine, whatever thingy in the border actually has 3 colors. I've reduced it to 1. If that looks too blocky, when I'm finished, I will actually go over and overstitch that with maybe like a twisted chain stitch, some kind of embroidery stitch to give it a little texture and interest. But for now, I'm just trying that out because I really like that green. I have pinked up the pink a little bit. And again, that's why I'm not going to offer a complete conversion until I've actually stitched everything, because this was not my original choice on pink. It isn't even close to it. I tried a pink that I thought was going to work and looked at that, was just like, no, that's not it. But I will share what I have chosen, and then if I have more colors by next episode before I put this aside, I will share those as well. So as I was saying, I did choose greens with some gray content in them. 1, because I like them, and 2, to just kind of nod to the original. And then I have, as I said, really pinked up the pinks, and then I have chosen a really, really vibrant red. That is a screamer red. It's definitely brighter than the one Kathleen picked for her conversion, because again, I look at this and I see brightness, and that's what I want to see in my stitch of this. So I am going to have the border be all pink, red, and green, and I am going to really emphasize that here as well. I would like to note, so friend of a friend was kind enough to tell me that there are some corrections on this chart. They're on Kathleen's website. I will link that in the description. It's mostly around the verse and how the verse runs into this flower here. I'm actually going to change the verse. That's a whole lot of over 1 letters, and as we've all heard, I hate stitching letters, so I'm going to shrink that, fill in with some flowers, you know, next year when I actually get around to it, because as you can see right now I'm down here and I'm not gonna get anywhere close to it through that cross. So I'd like eventually to fill that in, I think, with a snippet of Marvel. So Kathleen said in her notes on this that the large red edifice rises from the lawn and takes center stage. Perhaps a church is depicted by the multiple crosses on the dual steeples. I actually have a slightly different take on what I think this might represent. I think that's a manor house. We've got outbuildings, orchards. Oh my gosh, I can't talk. We've got the walled pleasure garden around the house, the ornamental pond, and then the parkland and farmland surrounding the manor with all of the animals and the shepherd and shepherdess. Lots of very metaphysical, poet, pastoral. So that's why I chose, I've got oh, and why I think that's an Elizabethan manor hall is because this whole look proliferated during the Elizabethan era in building. This is a photograph of Hardwick Hall. You can see some of the similarities there. I'm not saying that this is hardware call, just that this is an Elizabethan type manor building. So the reasons I think this isn't a church is because all of those square windows rising out of the towers. Although it could be a church. It can, I mean, the thing is, it can be whatever it means to you, right? So that was my take on what this represents. But whatever it is, it's beautiful. So I'm really enjoying stitching this. And I am trying to focus on the grass and then work outwards, because I find with a piece like this, not that I'm all that experienced on sampler stitching, that if you work all the fun stuff first and then you get down to a big block of grass, it'll sap your will to live. So I try and eat my vegetables first and chip away at that grass. I have done that little cat owl thingy and done a little grass around it, but mostly I've been focusing on that lighter yellow-green grass right underneath the house. I thought once I finished that, I could work on building up the house a little more. I do also need to pay some more attention to that border. I did just enough to test my colors out, and then I moved on. I'm not really loving that border. Okay, so as I said, I will be stitching on this through the end of September, and then I am going to set it aside, because tons and tons of model stitching. But I do have another start that I would like to get to this fall. Already cut my fabric for it, and it's not here. Hold pleats. Man, I am bad at Flosstubing. You spend forever setting everything out and then it's not in the project bag. Thought it was. So my start that I want to definitely at least start this fall is the new release from Fox and Rabbit, Elizabeth Campbell, 1838. So this is just the computer mock-up, but Karen was stitching on the model when I saw her and Bren at summer school, and it is fabulous. I love it. This isn't my usual kind of thing, but I just can't get it out of my head after seeing it. So I have already cut my fabric. So you might be able to guess from the size of this. This is my beloved 5363 Sicilian marzipan, and then I will do an original silk conversion for it with Soie Surfine, and then I am keeping that, or I was supposed to be keeping that, in my summer school bag, because that was where I saw it, and you know, got to sit with Karen and Bren, and then I've got their little pin on the zipper. So Elizabeth Campbell is coming to start. I'm not entirely sure when I'm gonna get to it, but I'm really excited about it. And then let's talk whips, other whips. Sorry, total brain freeze there for a second. And other whip would be AKGIT 1833 by Modern Folk Embroidery. So when last I saw you, I had, I think, just completed the first medallion in the second row, and I'm still steaming along because I've done the next two as well as the smaller medallions filling in along them. So that takes me just about halfway through the second row, which is really exciting. And this is still looking very clean on the back. Oh, actually, that reminds me, I was gonna show you the back of Oh Sweet Humility, which is also very, very clean. I have started every thread on this one with the pin stitch, as with AKGIT. I think it's just growing on me. It's like a habit, and I've become oddly attached to very neat backs on my work. Thing that I'm sure you really wanted to know about me, right? So this is the fabulous AKGIT. I have gotten through a second 100-meter spool of Soie Surfine. I'm ahead of target on my thread use, so I'm doing pretty well on that. So as previously discussed, the thread is Soie Surfine 2099, and it's on Legacy Linen 5363 Sicilian marzipan. It is such a striking piece. I would love to give more time to Oh Sweet Humility, but this is really my focus piece moving forward. I would love to have a finish on this. I'm still very far from that, but I can see major progress and I'm still loving it. So I'm going to continue putting in a lot of time on it, or at least as much as I can spare, because I do have a lot of other commitments going forward that are going to demand my time. I am also really enjoying seeing how the different motifs repeat and how they're reused in different combinations and how that makes them look different. So on your medallions, they've all got the same center and they've got the same structure of that center flower, 4 elements around it, and then some lacy fill-in. And yet they all look quite different. They're different sized, but just the different ways that those motifs are paired, all of which are seen elsewhere, is just fascinating. This pattern is an absolute masterpiece of design and execution. I can't get enough of it. One last little kind of nothing note about AKGIT. So my fobs. This is in my Liberty of London bag that I made with my personal favorite of my beaded fobs. As a gentle reminder, these are derived from the patterns that Fernridge Collections made. This is one of their kits, Herman the Hedgehog. This is the first one I made. So I won't be doing any tutorials or instructions about these. If you'd like to make your own, buy a Fernridge Collections kit, learn how to do it, and then you can branch out on your own. So when I was at summer school, we got there, we checked our stuff at the hotel, and then we proceeded in the shuttle to the attic, where we met Mary from Ann Arbor, who has become quite the beater of fobs after watching my Flosstubes. Mary, I'm really sorry. I know I foisted on you a very expensive habit with all these crystals. But anyways, Mary showed me something really interesting that she was taught by the owner of a bead store, I think in Ann Arbor. So Brenda was with us and she perked right up when she heard Ann Arbor. Like, Ann Arbor, Michigan? What? And that's this right there. This is called a wire guard. And you slip your thread right over it, and it protects it from wear, and it also allows it to move more easily with the clasp, which is really useful for a fob because they move. So Mary showed me that and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'll have to remember that for the future. I wasn't really too worried because I've never had a problem with wear damage on the thread or the attachment to the clasp. Ha ha ha, spoke too soon, because the very next day, I think I was just shoving too much stuff in my bag, so I found that my fob had come off my bag. What had happened was that I had actually pulled it free from the clasp. So I rewove it all together and I added a wire guard. Put the information on those in the description. So very helpful tip. Thank you, Mary from Ann Arbor. And you know, it's just funny. So summer school was really the first time I've been around a lot of people who watched my Flosstube. I'm a very quiet, stay-at-home kind of person, and it's kind of hearing that people watch my Flosstube, that they're influenced by the things I do, that they've taken up beading and teach me things in return, was just a totally wild experience for me. You know, we walk through life and sometimes we never know, or we don't know until much later, the people that we touch. Which is really just to say that I think we have, you know, such an extraordinary community here in stitching and on Flosstube. A lot of you may never meet me, but we all end up touching each other's lives through our shared love of stitching. And so with that, I will stop just rambling and bring on my very special guest for today, who is my mom, Trisha, to talk about her experience at summer school. All right, we're back with my special guest, my mom, Trisha. Hi, Mom. Thanks for coming on today.
Nice to be here.
We're going to talk about summer school. So you heard my recap of summer school on the last Flosstube, and now we're going to talk about your impressions of summer school.
Well, I just thought it was so amazing being with like-minded people, especially so many of them.
So many.
And they were so inspiring because these people are all so talented and they're making so many amazing things. I thought that was wonderful to see what everybody was making and just to connect with all these people from all over the country, you know, really doing a lot of interesting things. So that was one of my favorite parts of it.
Yeah, it's a really amazing community.
Yeah, it's like a fellowship.
It is.
A large
Fellowship of the
sewing circle, which was really exciting. And I'd never been to anything like that before.
Neither had I, actually. I've been to like the small little retreat of friends in April, but this was, my first time with a really big group of stitchers.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm really shy, which my mom knows about me. Social interactions are like not my thing, but I really felt at home with other stitchers.
Yeah, their stitching people have such a warm heart. They welcome you to the group, and even though I felt like everybody there was very advanced, and but it was still really enjoyable for me. And the attic was overwhelming too, just seeing all the beautiful pieces of art really that she has displayed all over the store. There are hundreds of them.
Oh yeah. I have now been, multiple times because we go every day when we're there, and I feel like every time I'm seeing something that I haven't seen before.
That is really true. You walk in the door and you're like, okay, I know that was there yesterday, but I was so distracted by everything I didn't see it. So
yeah, it definitely takes multiple trips to appreciate everything, and I think probably infinite trips. I'm sure the next time I go, I will see something I missed before.
Yeah, Gina's a master of display, and
oh yeah,
and then that doesn't even get into all the wonderful things there are to buy.
So many things to buy. So the attic for summer school was fully decked out. I don't think I really got into this last time. So I had been to the attic like under regular conditions in April, and that was amazing. But for summer school, they had brought out extra tables, they had extra models, they had so much linen, it was just Disneyland.
And everything is artfully displayed too.
Very
that
so.
That really stunned me. Like she'll have this beautiful old box, and then with it'll be exactly the right sampler laid on it. Oh, and here are some threads you could use.
Oh yeah, the way you just like pick everything up and add it in your basket.
Yeah, it's overwhelming, but in a really fun sort of way.
Yeah. So what would you say your favorite thing about summer school was?
Meeting all the different people and really seeing that many people who are interested in the same kind of things you and I are.
Yeah, because we don't know that many in like our regular day-to-day life.
Yeah, that's right. Well, how many of us really do in our day-to-day life know hundreds of people enjoying the same thing you are in the evening? So.
And would you say that there was anything that really surprised you about summer school?
Well, it didn't surprise me, but I was really happy to see how kind everyone was. And yes, maybe what I'm making is something they did 30 years ago. It moved way past that, but it's still appreciated for what it is. So it didn't surprise me, but I found it really heartwarming.
And do you think you want to go back?
No, absolutely. Who wouldn't? Absolutely.
Okay. Anything else that particularly struck you or that you want to say about summer school?
Well, I also thought it was really funny, and I'll show you in a minute. One of the first things I chose to buy was displayed right inside the door. It's kind of like, right away I see something. No, so that's the way it is, a big treasure chest.
Oh, yeah, it definitely is. So, a lot of you responded in the comments that you'd like to have a chance to get to summer school or the attic. If you ever have the chance, definitely do. So, first timer here, really loved the experience. I did Full confession, I have to twist her arm a little bit at first. Phoenix in August didn't sound that appetizing.
Well, and I also don't feel like I'm as accomplished as everyone else in the room there. Definitely.
All are welcome in Jean's world.
No, that is one really neat thing about her.
So
She's an amazing woman.
It's a really special place and a really special experience, whether you make it to summer school or you just have a chance to go to the attic at some point.
Yeah, it's a very unique place.
It's a really unique place. And
Not your average needles.
No, we're very lucky that we have a wonderful LNS, needle in a haystack, but the full experience of the attic, I mean, all the models, really.
Yeah, she's really collected. And how many of those has she herself stitched? I think
A fair amount. So a lot are from designers, I believe, lent them for display at the attic. You know, I lent a few of my own pieces for the weekend, and then my stitch of Plum Street, my early days, is still on display at the attic. Some are stitched by the other staff members, like Carolyn's stitch of My Home Sweet Home. And then a lot of the high count pieces, I believe, are actually stitched by Jean herself.
Yeah, very amazing.
Yeah.
Has to be a lifetime amount of work.
She's just an amazing, really inspiring person.
That's a good word for it. Inspiring. Yeah.
I think everybody comes back from the attic with at least one project so that they can say they did because Jean did it, which is true for this one. So let's get into your haul. Show us what you bought.
Well, since we're talking about it, well, first of all, here's my bag from the event. And displayed right inside the door was this sampler.
This is Clara Hansen from Hello by Liz Matthews.
It's kind of reflecting the plastic.
There we go.
And here are the threads that we selected.
So this is Jean's conversion. If you like these colors, call the attic.
Yeah, and then Katie found this color variation.
So this is actually Jean's stitch. I pulled this off her Instagram. Sorry, Jean. And so this is displayed right inside the door. So she took the single color pattern of Clara Hansen, picked,
and did a light and dark.
yeah, did two colors, which really brings out the pattern.
It's
No, you're not supposed to say the numbers because the attic picked the thread.
oh, okay.
If you'd like the colors, call the attic, but they are two very beautiful blue-green.
Yeah, that's a color I really love.
Very much so.
That would be beautiful in other color ranges.
It would.
Too.
And then we picked out a linen for you too.
Yeah.
So this is Legacy Linen 37 count Russian tea cake. And why did you want that linen?
I thought it would look really good with the beautiful blues and greens.
It is going to look beautiful with the blues and greens. So she was inspired to start that and was going to start initially, but decided to keep going on her one width. Like me, Mom's very much monogamous stitcher. But let's keep on showing haul. We'll get to the width in a minute.
Well, linen.
Yeah.
I also responded to the beautiful Mason linen and bought my little packet, which is kind of a khaki with a little bit of green tones to them, I would say, wouldn't you?
Yes, you definitely.
So, of course, I loved that.
The green one. So this color is haberdashery, and you're in 40 count. And yeah, I looked at this one. I looked at all of them, actually.
Yeah,
it was hard to choose.
And they did a really good job of putting the different gradients of colors in them, too.
Yeah.
So I had to have one of those. And then I also...
Everyone had to have one of those.
A fair amount of that was sold. And then I also got a couple pieces of Legacy. Oops. A 38 count filbert.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, and then an Irish coffee. Another beautiful Legacy. I think that's 38.
Yeah, they're both 38 counts.
Yeah. So that was my linen haul. And then some patterns. Also beautifully displayed inside the door at the attic is this gorgeous, gorgeous sampler.
I think
I
I
had
got the
to have-
original.
Is it? It's
I think
just
so.
beautiful.
So
I don't know, the
this
colors are not
is
maybe as captured on.
Anne Wilson, 1801 by Gentle Pursuit. And yeah, these really delicate colors. It's a Quaker sampler with more floral motifs than you sometimes see.
Just beautiful. Even if I never make the whole thing, I have to make just like that friendship in the middle. I don't know if you can see this in the middle. It says friendship. It's just beautiful.
Yeah. So you could just stitch that as, you know, a pincushion or like a standalone is always a great way to use some of the bigger charts.
That was another one that I was definitely inspired by, the original of the attic. And this, too, another one of our finds of the attic, Julie
Gottfried, and let's see, who's this by? Oh, Soie, I think, is the designer.
all in the blue tones. And on the back, there are some
Yes,
small pieces that.
she's taken out different elements from the original sampler and then shown all the different ways you can use them, which is true for any sampler, but it's always really nice when it's done
and it was
for you.
beautifully done there.
Yeah, and again, these are definitely your kinds of colors.
Yeah, I'm so boring. I always pick the same ones.
You know what you
or,
like.
or we could say we know what we like.
Yeah, that's true of me too.
Yeah. And then I think the rest of the things I brought were really fun things. Like I love Plumseed Stampler's Hello Fall. And after buying that linen,
Yeah.
that was just had to have that.
So this we picked Filbert for. And I think the fall colors are
Or
really
it would
innocent.
look good in one of these too.
It would too. Yeah, like the greeny ones.
Mm-hmm.
So that's Plum Street Samplers. Hello, Fall.
I think she's done them for other seasons too.
Yeah.
And this one was just kind of fun. It made me giggle. You had me a pumpkin spice.
Although we're really upset right now because Starbucks has discontinued their pumpkin scones. You can still get a pumpkin spice latte, but you cannot get a pumpkin scone. And
Only
we're
the
upset.
creative member of our family is trying to perfect a recipe to make them. And she's doing a good job.
It was so much easier to just go to Starbucks and buy a pumpkin scone and eat
Well,
it.
it's time to bake when you want to stitch.
I know, right?
All right, and then these are more looking ahead to spring. 2 spring ones. I really like that one.
Stacy Nash, Spring Basket, Pinky. Yeah, that's got some good colors.
It's got some good stuff in it.
That's a good spring one.
That looks like something Katie could have a lot of fun with too.
It does, doesn't it?
Yes. Oh, and I love the snowman. He's
This
just so
is
cute.
Cartage Gardens Samplings. The gardener.
A snowman in the spring. How's that gonna work? I don't know. I just thought it was.
It's very you.
Yeah,
Because she loves Christmas and she loves gardening, so the two together.
That was apparently the connection.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I've gotten through my haul.
So we
Here's-
came back and my father was quite shocked because you're not much of a stasher. I'm not actually that much of a stasher either. And we just came home with all this
suitcase full.
stuff. And it's just like, what happened
and
to
then
you?
all the wonderful gifts, the little things that people were giving you. I was pulling them out and he'd go, "There's more?" Oh yes, there's more.
There's so much more.
So yes, he was astounded.
But you were inspired by the spirit of the attic.
Absolutely, it was wonderful.
And then what you were working on.
Which may someday actually be done.
Oh,
because
you're almost done.
I am almost there. This kind of It's taken me months. I'm down to just like a couple little light green stitches in the corner.
So this is Heartstring Samplery.
This is this one.
French Flea Market Biscornu. This actually got a fair amount of attention at summer school because the colorway really affects how you see it. So I did the color conversion. I'll post it again in the description. Put it on a slightly different linen, just, you know,
Oh, yeah.
greener blues, kind of went for sagey greens to set them off, and it just kind of made some people see it in a different light.
Yeah.
Not that the original isn't beautiful, it is, but it just goes to show you how much color can affect how you see something and whether or not it speaks to you. So Mom loved the pattern originally, that's why she chose it, and then once we put it in her colors,
That helped.
oh yes, it looks absolutely gorgeous. She got asked by a lot of people, what is that? I don't think I've seen it before, and they had, they just didn't recognize it.
Yeah.
So that's French Flea Market Biscornu.
Now we just have to finish it,
That's okay.
which might be interesting.
Well, she got a little intimidated because on Show and Share, somebody showed a Biscornu and had a few things to say about the finishing,
Yep.
which I think was why you were looking at Clara Hansen all like, I might start something else.
Maybe I should just do that and not finish it, but I have to finish this.
You will finish it. You're almost done.
Yeah, just have to find a nice little button for the middle, and then probably watch some YouTubes on how to finish.
There are YouTubes for absolutely everything in the finishing department, so I'm sure we can set you up.
Good.
It'll be good.
Yeah.
So, projects, whips, starts, haul, any final thoughts?
I think that's about it.
Okay.
Happy to be here today.
Well, it's always a pleasure to have you on my Flosstube. And then I do also have the giveaway winners from the last episode. So these were my gifts to you to celebrate summer school and our experience at the attic for summer school. The first giveaway was a chart for Sarah Stewart Hardman. This was one of the whips that Jean had
yes.
displayed in that cabinet, if you remember.
I do.
Yeah.
It's magnificent.
So the winner of the Sarah Stewart Hardman chart is Lori Millsap. And for today's winners, I have commented on your comment. Please send me your mailing address. I'll get these out to you. Congratulations. And then the winner of the notebook. So these were my table gifts, our table gifts, showing Brita Mart from the front of the Brita Mart casket. It's just a little notebook I had printed. The winner of the notebook is Susan Bajdek, Bagdek. Sorry about mangling your last name. You're the winner of the notebook. Congratulations. So those are our giveaway winners for today. And then that pretty much brings us to the end of this episode. So for next time, we'll see how much progress I had on Sampler September, how much further I could get on my 2 samplers. I will also have a new start to show as well. I've got a little something up my sleeve that we'll be looking at next time. As a final reminder, Queen Anne's Pin Pillow is now open for registration. Links in the description. I hope you will think about joining me on the wonderful journey that is this class. So that brings us to the end of another episode. I'll see you again in 2 weeks, and until then, happy stitching.
Bye-bye.
So to close out today's episode, we have a full kit unboxing for Queen Anne's Pin Pillow. Let's take a look inside the glass kit. So there's just a couple cards for you, including our course mascot, Elizabeth Vernon. I love that painting to an absurd degree. And then what do we have inside? The first thing is your wool roving to stuff your pincushion with. When I said it includes everything, I did mean that. So literally everything that you need except your frame. as was discussed at length in the Flosstube. I think I kind of went on about that a little too much. I hope you'll forgive me. And then we also have the ground linen that this piece is worked on. That's Legacy Linen 38 count Wayfarer's Cloak. It's the same linen and size cut as were used on the Elizabethan Valentine. The difference on this one is that your linen is not pre-printed with the design. This project requires design transfer. However, don't stress about that because you've got what you need, and it's also really comprehensively covered in the instructions. If you've never done design transfer before, don't worry, I've got you, you're good. And to that note, you have what you need for design transfer. So I have messed around with pretty much all the different ways you can get a design onto ground fabric for surface embroidery, and this is by far my favorite. It's the most forgiving, it's the most versatile, it's the easiest to work with. It's, in my opinion, the gold standard, and that would be a fine chalk pencil with 2 different light colors, because you do have some different needs, different preferences, and I've given you both so that you can try out what you like and know what you like going forward, not just what I like. So all you need for design transfer is this and a light source, whether that's a light pad or a window. I've used both to great success. So that's your design transfer, and again, all fully covered in the instructions. The great thing about design transfer is that people kind of stress about it sometimes, but you really don't have to, because it all gets covered by your embroidery. And that goes double for a project like Queen Anne's pin pillow, where you can't see an actual thing of the transfer underneath because this is full coverage stitching. So again, don't stress if you've never done it before. It's not going to be a problem. And then we also have some beads here. So this is for the bird's eye. I used a crystal, and that's what I've given you, but I've also given you a couple of seed beads just in case you'd like a darker eye for the bird, or if you lose the crystal, because I did only give you one, so try not to lose that. And then we've got all your needles too. So those are clearly labeled with everything that you'll need, only 4 to work this project. Use different needles for some of the different weights of thread in this project. And then we have, as discussed, the 25-gram spool of silver tambour thread. Silver tambour thread is just wonderful to work with because it's so flexible and so sparkly. So 25 grams is more than you need, but I want you to have lots and lots to work with so that you're really comfortable when you're stitching this project. This is your finishing pack. So we have the silver bullion, and this is used, so this is basically everything you need for the corner tassels. You have Soie Surfine to do all of your finishing with, and then 2 spools of Evolve for your corner silk tassels. I myself actually used a silver pearl for a smooth pearl for my corners, but I found that they got a little damaged with wear. So for your kit, I switched to the heavier bullion, but otherwise it's identical to everything that I used myself. I love these tassels, the way they just, it's the perfect finishing touch. You see it on a lot of 17th century originals, and once you've done it, it's really easy to understand why. And then we also have a full spool of the wonderful Gilt Silk Twist Vitruve. You don't use very much for Queen Anne's pin pillow, so that means that you will have lots and lots of extra of this super fabulous thread. And like I said, you guys will be friends once you've stitched the Queen Anne's pin pillow, so you're gonna see why you would want lots of extra of it. And then we also have your full thread palette. So as discussed, 10 colors of Soie de Paris. And so this is very similar to the Elizabethan Valentine, just a little expanded to give you some more colors and a little more room to shade and play with to get all of these beautiful floral motifs. We also have the finishing fabrics. So these are carefully wrapped and I'm not gonna undo it, but that's a piece of muslin to back it after it's finished. You do not stitch through the muslin. That's covered in the instructions, but oh, it bears repeating because a lot of people like to back surface embroidery for their stitching. That's not done here. And then on top is the beautiful piece of pink silk fay that's used for the back of your pincushion. If you've never used silk fay before, it is fabulous for finishing because it's just gorgeous and it really holds its shape. So that makes it a lot easier to do a very defined rectangular shape like the pincushion. You're gonna enjoy that. And then the last thing in your box, there is a little last surprise quote underneath for you to find, but I'll let you discover that for yourself. There's always a literary quote with my kids, even if sometimes you have to look for it. And then the last thing is your tracing template. So you'll use this with your chalk pencil and your light source and your linen to get your design onto the fabric so that you can go ahead and stitch this beautiful piece. So that is your full kit for Queen Anne's pin pillow. I hope you enjoyed seeing everything that you'll get as part of your class kit. So again, everything that you need except your frame. And I look forward to having many of you in class. Please don't hesitate to contact me if you've got questions. Going ahead, got the class, and I will see you again in 2 weeks. Until then, happy stitching.